Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear respected elders, brothers, sisters, and children. What is Ashura and fasting on this 10th of Muharram day? Muslims in general should have a better idea about the importance of mourning and the place it occupies in Islam. They should go all out to keep the mourning on Ali Muhammad al-Islam alive, because without it, there is a question mark over their Islam. In the least, there can be no place for baseless objections and lame excuses to stifle the mourning ceremonies, especially if the Muslims entertain hopes of salvation and paradise in the hereafter. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reply to the question serves as a reminder about the importance of this day in Islam and the reason why Shias in particular and Muslims in general organize activities like mourning ceremonies and assemblies, majalis, to revisit the grief of Ali Muhammad al-Islam. Elegy recitals like marsiyas and noves, and figurines like taziyah, and distribution of the barakat, through which the mourners seek divine blessings, and listing financial support for these events. My next topic is about exposing the fact about fasting on the day of Ashura. By all standards, the day Imam Hussein, the grandson of the beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was martyred, it was a great tragedy. Indeed, it was the greatest tragedy. He was martyred along with his family members simply because he stood against injustice. The family of Yazid, the Banu Umayyah, and the family of Ziyad rejoiced the day he was killed. Not only did they celebrate the day of Ashura, but they turned it into a tradition for subsequent years. They would gather their family and friends and rejoice at the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. While fasting is a great form of worship, the Shia have valid reservations regarding the fast of Ashura. It is always recommended to fast any time throughout the year except Eid. But the problem is that there is a history of politics behind the fast of Ashura. Killing the very grandson of the Prophet was a major crime. So Banu Umayyah attempted to shift the focus of the peoples for the day of Ashura. Possessing power and money, they spread to the Muslims that Ashura is a blessed day. They did so by indoctrinating their people that on Ashura, God saved Prophet Musa and his people from the Pharaoh. He saved Prophet Ibrahim from the fire of Namrud, and so on. To thank God for that blessed day, they encouraged the people to fast on Ashura. Now here are several points that demonstrate how the hadith which speaks of the fast of Ashura are fabricated. The Prophet, peace be upon him, probably never said them, but they were forged after him. First of all, there are several hadiths in Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, and Tirmidhi which tell us when the Prophet arrived in Medina, he saw the Jews fasting. Upon knowing the reason why they were fasting, he said, "We the Muslims are closer to Musa, so we should also fast." If you analyze these hadiths, you will realize that they all go back to these four narrators who supposedly narrated them directly from the Prophet. 1. Ibn Abbas, 2. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, and 3. Abu Huraira, and 4. Mawiyah. The Prophet came to Medina the first year of the Hijrah. As for Ibn Abbas, he was born 3 years before Hijrah, which makes him 4 years old when the Prophet supposedly said this hadith. In the science of hadith, the narration of a 4-year-old boy is generally not accepted. As for Abu Musa, he came from the tribe of Banu Ashur in Yemen. He became Muslim before the Hijrah, but he was not seen in Medina till the Battle of Khaybar in the 7th year after Hijrah. The Prophet had sent him to Yemen to preach to his tribe. Hence, Abu Musa was not in Medina in the 1st year of Hijrah. So how could he possibly narrate this hadith? As for Abu Huraira, he also was not seen in Medina until after the Battle of Khaybar in the 7th year of Hijrah. He also came from Yemen. As for Muawiyah, the son of Abu Sufyan, he became Muslim in the 8th year of Hijrah. So how could he narrate a hadith from the Prophet 7 or 8 years before he became a Muslim? Some of the hadith go back to Ibn Zubayr, who was also a young boy when the Prophet entered Medina. Therefore, it is quite clear that all the narrators of this hadith were either not in Medina at the time or they were young boys. So how can we possibly accept such a hadith? It is pretty convincing that the hadith was forged later on by Bani Umayyah. Secondly, let's look at the word Ashura, which is mentioned in the hadith. According to Ibn al-Athir, there are two meanings to Ashura, an old meaning and a new meaning. The old meaning, which was during the Arabs' time and the Prophet's time, meant the 10th day of any month. The new meaning surfaced after Imam Hussein al-Islam was killed on the 10th of Muharram. After that, Ashura came to be known as the 10th of Muharram. But before that, it was simply the 10th day of any month. So when the Prophet supposedly said this hadith, he just said Ashura, and he didn't say the 10th day of Muharram, of which month. This demonstrates that the hadith was forged after the day of Ashura, and it slipped from the mind of the ones who forged it, that before Ashura, the word had a different, more general meaning. Thirdly, today, go to any Jew, even their scholars, and ask them, do you have a fast on the day which God saved Moses, or a day which corresponds to the 10th of Muharram? They don't. And they will tell you that even in the past, they didn't have such a fast. They fast on Yom Kippur, the day when Moses returned from Mount Sinai and realized that his people were worshipping the calf. To expiate for their sin, they kept fast, but they have no fast on the day God saved them from the Pharaoh. But the hadith in the books of Sahih tells us that it was a tradition of the Jews and they would all fast that day. Even if you look at the day the Jews fast, it never corresponded with the 10th of Muharram when the Prophet came to Medina. It corresponded with Muharram on the 28th year after Hijrah. Fourthly, it seems the one who forged the hadith was not aware of how the Islamic calendar originated. During the time of Hazrat Umar, since Muslims wanted a set date to refer to, he created the Hijri calendar by seeking the advice of Imam Ali al-Islam. So they decided to make the starting point the migration of the Prophet, and they made the first month Muharram. However, the Prophet entered Medina in Rabi al-Awwal, not in Muharram, and so the one who probably forged the hadith assumed that the Prophet entered Medina in Muharram, because that is when the calendar starts. So the hadith tells us the Prophet when he first entered Medina, he saw the Jews fasting on Ashura, but the Prophet didn't enter Medina in Muharram. He did so in Rabi al-Awwal, 10 months before Muharram. There's a clear discrepancy here. Fifthly, the Prophet knows more about the Sharia of previous prophets, such as Prophet Musa, and he doesn't need the Jews to teach him that. The Prophet is also higher than copying what the Jews would do. Sixthly, how come there's so much emphasis on the fast of Ashura around the world? Thousands of speeches are dedicated to it. Millions of pamphlets are distributed encouraging people to fast on Ashura, and so on. There are many other days throughout the year which are highly recommended to fast, such as the 27th of Rajab. But how come you don't see a single pamphlet or speech encouraging it? This shows that this is a political thing, originally designed to focus the attention away from the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and to consider it a blessed day. I don't know how anyone can stand on the day of judgment before Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and consider the very day his grandson was slaughtered a blessed day. Thus, based on these reasons, Shia have their reservations on the fast of Ashura. But Banu Umayyah were behind it, and considering it a blessed day is not an offense to the Shia, but an offense to Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family.